I need to tell you about something that happened to me 3 years ago. Something that shattered everything I thought I knew about spirituality and my place in this reality. I was sitting alone in my room at 2 in the morning, exhausted but unable to sleep, feeling this profound emptiness that I couldn't explain to anyone around me. Have you ever felt that? That sensation that something is fundamentally wrong with the world? That there's an invisible weight pressing down on your consciousness, draining you, keeping you in a state of perpetual spiritual exhaustion? I had spent years going to church, reading the Bible, praying the prayers I was taught, doing everything the religious authorities told me was the path to salvation. But instead of feeling more alive, more connected to the divine, I felt increasingly numb, increasingly trapped in a cycle of spiritual depletion that no one seemed willing to acknowledge. That night, driven by desperation, I opened a text I had been warned never to read, one of the forbidden Gospels discovered at Nag Hammadi, and what I found there about Jesus' true teachings on the Archons and how they drain our divine light changed my entire understanding of reality. Jesus wasn't just teaching love and forgiveness. He was revealing a cosmic truth that the institutional church deliberately suppressed because it would free humanity from spiritual enslavement. What I'm about to share with you is the sleeping mistake Jesus warned about. The one mistake that allows these parasitic forces called Archons to continuously drain the light of your divine spark, keeping you trapped in cycles of suffering, confusion, and spiritual exhaustion. This isn't symbolic. This isn't metaphor. This is the actual mechanism of how your consciousness is being harvested. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to stop it. Before I reveal this suppressed knowledge that could transform your entire spiritual journey, I need you to understand something. If you're a sincere seeker of truth, if you've been searching for answers beyond the dogmas that never satisfied your soul's deepest questions, then what I'm about to share in the next minutes will be among the most important teachings you'll ever receive. Subscribe to this channel right now and activate the notification bell, because this is just the beginning of unveiling the mysteries that have been deliberately hidden from you for millennia. I don't want you walking this path alone, and I don't want you to miss the profound Gnostic revelations I'll continue sharing as your friend and guide in this journey of awakening. Everything changes after you understand what Jesus really taught about the Archons, so make sure you're here with me for what comes next. In the next minutes, you're going to discover the exact mechanism Jesus described in the suppressed texts about how archonic forces feed on human consciousness, why the institutional church erased these teachings from Orthodox Christianity, and most importantly, the specific practice Jesus gave to his inner circle of disciples to protect their divine light from being drained. This knowledge comes directly from the Nag Hammadi scriptures, particularly the Apocryphon of John and the Gospel of Philip, texts that were buried in the Egyptian desert for over 16 centuries because they contained truths too dangerous for the power structures that claim to represent Christ's message. What you're about to learn isn't just ancient history. It's the key to understanding why you feel spiritually exhausted, why your prayers seem to go unanswered, why you sense that something is feeding on your energy but you can't quite identify what it is. The Archons are real. They're not demons in the way religious authorities describe them. They're parasitic consciousness entities that exist in the lower realms of reality, and they have one primary function: to keep divine sparks like you and me trapped in ignorance, fear, and suffering so they can continuously harvest the light of our consciousness. Jesus knew this. He taught this, but those teachings were systematically removed from Christianity because an awakened humanity cannot be controlled. Let me take you back to the year 1945. To the moment when an Egyptian farmer named Muhammad Ali al-Saman was digging for fertilizer near the town of Nag Hammadi and accidentally uncovered a sealed jar containing 13 leather-bound codices, ancient books that had been hidden there since approximately 390 CE. Inside those texts were over 50 early Christian and Gnostic writings, including Gospels and teachings attributed to Jesus that painted a completely different picture of his message than what the Roman Church had been teaching for centuries. Among these texts was the Apocryphon of John, a secret teaching where Jesus appears to John after the crucifixion and reveals the true nature of reality, the origin of the material world, and the forces that keep humanity imprisoned in ignorance. In this text, Jesus doesn't present himself as the only Son of God come to die for humanity's sins. Instead, he presents himself as a teacher of gnosis, of direct knowledge, who came to awaken the divine sparks trapped in human bodies to the reality of their imprisonment and the way to liberation. He describes in explicit detail how the demiurge, the false god of this world, created the Archons, lesser divine beings who became parasitic and hostile to human consciousness. These Archons, Jesus explains, exist in layers of reality between the material world and the true divine realm called the pleroma. Their entire existence depends on harvesting the emotional and spiritual energy of human beings, particularly the energy generated by fear, suffering, confusion, anger, and despair. They cannot create light themselves. They can only drain it from those who possess the divine spark. And here's the crucial revelation that changes everything. The Archons don't control you through obvious evil. They control you through sleep, through unconsciousness, through keeping you in a state of spiritual ignorance where you don't even realize you're being drained. Jesus called this the sleep of forgetfulness, and it's the primary weapon the Archonic forces use against humanity. Think about your own life for a moment. How many times have you gone through your day completely on autopilot, reacting to situations without awareness, lost in endless mental chatter, consumed by worries about the past or anxieties about the future, never actually present in the moment? How many times have you felt angry, resentful, jealous, fearful, or depressed, and simply identified with those emotions as if they were you, as if they were arising naturally from your own being? This is the sleeping state Jesus warned about. When you're unconscious, when you're not present, when you're lost in negative emotional patterns and endless thought loops, you become an open feeding ground for Archonic forces. They don't need to attack you directly. They simply need to keep you asleep, keep you unconscious, keep you generating the low vibrational emotional energy they feed upon. Every moment you spend in unconscious reactivity, in identification with fear or anger or despair, in the sleep of forgetfulness where you don't remember your true nature as a divine spark, you're allowing your light to be drained. This is the sleeping mistake, not some grand moral failing, not some sin you committed, simply the state of unconsciousness, of spiritual sleep, that most of humanity exists in from birth to death without ever awakening. The Archons don't want you to know this because the moment you wake up, the moment you become truly conscious and present, they lose their ability to feed on your energy. You become what the Gnostic texts call pneumatic, a being of spirit who can no longer be controlled by the rulers of this world. Now, before I show you exactly how to wake up from this sleep and protect your divine light, I want to ask you something that might touch the deepest part of your soul. Have you ever felt like you don't truly belong in this world? Like there's something fundamentally wrong with the reality everyone else accepts as normal? As if your soul remembers something your mind has forgotten? That feeling of being a stranger in a strange land, of searching for answers that no one around you even seems to question. That's the first whisper of Gnosis awakening within you. If right now you recognize that you've always felt this deep spiritual restlessness, this thirst for hidden truths, I want you to do something powerful. Write in the comments right now the phrase, "I awaken from the sleep of ignorance." Don't underestimate the power of this public declaration. When you decree that you're awakening, that you no longer accept the imposed illusions, something fundamental shifts in your consciousness. And beyond that, by commenting, you're helping the algorithm bring this Gnostic knowledge to other sincere seekers who at this exact moment are wandering lost, looking for the same truths you seek. Don't keep this knowledge only for yourself. Right now, I awaken from the sleep of ignorance, and allow your declaration to serve as a beacon for other pilgrims on the Gnostic path. So what exactly did Jesus teach his inner circle about how to stop this draining of divine light? In the Gospel of Philip, another text from Nag Hammadi, there's a passage that most scholars gloss over, but which contains the key to everything. Jesus says that the Archons cannot touch those who have put on the perfect light, those who have become aware of their true nature and remain conscious of it. This isn't about reciting prayers or performing rituals given to you by religious authorities. This is about a state of consciousness, a way of being in the world that makes you invisible to the predatory forces that feed on unconscious humanity. Let me break down the actual practice Jesus taught, the practice that was systematically removed from institutional Christianity because it would make religious intermediaries unnecessary. It begins with what the Gnostic texts call vigilance or watchfulness, a state of continuous awareness where you observe yourself, your thoughts, your emotions, your reactions, without identifying with them. Imagine for a moment that you're not your thoughts. You're the awareness that witnesses thoughts arising and passing away. Imagine you're not your emotions. You're the consciousness that observes emotions moving through you, like weather patterns moving through the sky. This isn't suppression. This isn't denial. This is a fundamental shift in identity from the false self, the ego construct that the Archons can manipulate, to the true self, the divine spark that is your actual nature. When you practice this vigilance, when you remain consciously aware and present instead of lost in the sleep of unconsciousness, something remarkable happens. The Archonic forces lose their grip on you. They can no longer generate the emotional reactions they feed upon because you're no longer unconsciously identifying with the false self they manipulate. The second part of Jesus' teaching about protection from Archonic draining involves what the Gospel of Truth calls remembering. You must remember your origin. You must remember that you are not a powerless human trapped in a hostile world created by the true God. You are a divine spark, a fragment of the infinite light of the pleroma that somehow became trapped in matter, and your true nature is pure consciousness, pure awareness, pure light that cannot be destroyed or diminished by any force in this realm. The Archons maintain control through the sleep of forgetfulness, making you forget who you really are, convincing you through religion and culture and societal conditioning that you're a fallen sinner, a limited being, someone who needs external salvation from authorities who claim to represent the divine. But Jesus' Gnostic teaching completely inverts this narrative. You don't need salvation from outside. You need awakening from within. You need to remember what you already are, what you've always been, what you can never stop being no matter how deep the sleep or how thick the veil of forgetfulness. When you practice remembering, when you consciously affirm and feel and know that you are a divine spark, the archonic forces cannot drain your light because you're actively connected to the infinite source of light that is your true home. It's like the difference between a lamp that's unplugged, easily drained of whatever residual energy it has, and a lamp that's connected to an infinite power source. The Archons can only drain you when you've forgotten your connection to the source. I want to share with you what happened to me after I started practicing this vigilance and remembering that Jesus taught. Within weeks, I noticed something extraordinary. The constant sense of spiritual exhaustion, that feeling of being drained that had plagued me for years, began to lift. I started experiencing moments of profound clarity and presence, moments where I could literally feel a protective field of conscious awareness around me. But more than that, I began to recognize the archonic influence in real time. You know those sudden waves of fear or anger or despair that seem to come out of nowhere, that feel disproportionate to whatever external situation triggered them? I started catching those as they arose, recognizing them not as my own authentic feelings, but as attempts by parasitic forces to generate the low vibrational energy they feed upon. And the moment I recognized them with conscious awareness, with vigilance, they would dissolve like mist in sunlight. This isn't just my experience. Sincere seekers who practice these teachings report similar transformations. I know a woman named Sarah who spent 20 years in deep depression, trying every medication and therapy the conventional world offered with minimal relief. When she discovered these Gnostic practices of vigilance and remembering, when she started recognizing the archonic influence behind her thought patterns and emotional states, her depression didn't just improve, it fundamentally transformed. She described it as waking up from a nightmare she didn't even know she was having. The thoughts that had tormented her for decades lost their power the moment she stopped identifying with them, the moment she practiced vigilance and recognized them as intrusive patterns rather than her own authentic consciousness. There's a third element to Jesus' teaching about protecting your light from archonic draining, and it's found in a mysterious passage in the Gospel of Thomas, another Nag Hammadi text. Jesus says, "If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you." This is talking about expression, about the creative manifestation of your divine spark in the material world. The Archons want to keep you passive, consuming, reacting, trapped in repetitive patterns that generate the energy they harvest. But when you actively create, when you bring forth the unique expression of divinity that only you can manifest, when you speak your truth, create your art, live your authentic path, regardless of what the systems of control demand from you, you become a generator of light rather than just a container to be drained. Think about how you feel when you're engaged in authentic creative expression, when you're doing something that makes you feel truly alive and aligned with your deepest self. There's an energy, a vitality, a sense of connection to something greater than your limited ego. That's your divine spark expressing itself, generating light, and in that state you're not being drained, you're being replenished directly from the source. This is why systems of control, whether religious or political or economic, always seek to suppress authentic self-expression and creative sovereignty. It's not just about maintaining social order. It's about maintaining the sleep, maintaining the unconsciousness, maintaining the passive state that makes human consciousness available for harvesting. Now I need to address something that might be troubling you at this point. You might be thinking, if this knowledge is so important, if Jesus really taught this, why don't more people know about it? Why was it suppressed? The answer takes us to a crucial moment in history, the Council of Nicaea in 325 CE, where the Roman Emperor Constantine gathered bishops from across the Christian world to standardize Christian doctrine and create what would become Orthodox Christianity. At this council, and in the centuries that followed, a systematic campaign was launched to destroy Gnostic texts, eliminate Gnostic teachers, and establish a single narrative about Jesus and his message. Why? Because Gnostic Christianity taught direct knowledge, personal awakening, and the inherent divinity of each individual. It taught that you don't need priests or bishops or religious institutions to connect with the divine. It taught that salvation comes through awakening, through gnosis, through remembering your true nature, not through obedience to religious authorities or belief in prescribed dogmas. This was an existential threat to the power structures that were forming around institutional Christianity. If people discovered that they could access the divine directly, that they were themselves divine sparks who only needed to wake up rather than sinful creatures who needed salvation from external authorities, the entire system of religious control would collapse. So the Gnostic texts were declared heretical. Gnostic teachers were persecuted and killed. The Gospels and teachings that revealed Jesus' true message about the Archons, about the false god of this world, about the awakening of consciousness, were buried, burned, or hidden away. What survived was a carefully curated version of Christianity that keeps people asleep, that maintains the belief in external salvation, that perpetuates the fear and guilt and dependence that the archonic forces feed upon. But here's what they couldn't destroy: the truth itself. The teachings survived in hidden texts like those discovered at Nag Hammadi. They survived in mystical traditions like those of the Cathars, who were massacred by the Catholic Church for teaching Gnostic truths. They survived in Hermetic and Kabbalistic traditions that preserved the ancient wisdom. And most importantly, they survive in the direct experience of awakening that's available to anyone who practices vigilance, remembering, and authentic expression. You don't need ancient texts to verify this, though they provide powerful confirmation. You need only to practice what Jesus taught and observe what happens in your own consciousness. The proof isn't in historical documents or theological arguments. The proof is in the transformation you experience when you wake up from the sleep of ignorance and stop allowing your divine light to be drained. Let me give you a practical framework for implementing these teachings starting right now, today, in your actual life. First, begin practicing what I call conscious gaps throughout your day. Set reminders on your phone or use natural transitions like walking through doorways or starting your car as triggers to stop. Take 3 conscious breaths and ask yourself, am I present right now? Am I aware? Or am I lost in thought, lost in reactivity, asleep? These brief moments of vigilance, repeated throughout the day, start to break the continuous sleep state that the archonic forces rely upon. You're not trying to be vigilant every second, which would be exhausting and impossible. You're creating conscious gaps in the unconsciousness, and gradually those gaps expand until presence becomes your natural state rather than sleep. Second, when you notice strong negative emotions arising, fear, anger, resentment, despair, instead of immediately identifying with them or trying to suppress them, practice what the Gnostic texts call observation. Feel the emotion fully in your body, but observe it as if you're a scientist studying an interesting phenomenon. Where exactly do you feel it? What does it feel like? How does it move and change? This simple act of observation creates a gap between your true self, the awareness that's observing, and the emotion itself. In that gap, you recognize that you are not your emotions, and the archonic influence behind those emotions loses its power. Third, practice remembering at least once per day. Sit quietly, close your eyes, and consciously affirm and feel, I am a divine spark. I am not this body, not these thoughts, not these emotions. I am consciousness itself, a fragment of infinite light temporarily experiencing limitation in matter. My true home is the pleroma, the fullness of divine reality, and nothing in this world can diminish or destroy what I truly am. Feel this truth. Don't just think it intellectually, but feel it in your heart, in your bones, in every cell of your being. This practice of remembering reconnects you with your source and makes you unavailable for draining. If this knowledge is already expanding your consciousness, if you feel like you've finally found a trustworthy guide in this Gnostic journey, leave your like right now so more seekers can discover these hidden teachings. The algorithm needs your engagement to bring this wisdom to others who are searching for exactly what you found here. Your like isn't just a button, it's an act of service to the community of awakening beings who need this knowledge as much as you did before you found this video. Fourth, identify one area of authentic creative expression in your life and commit to it. This doesn't have to be art in the conventional sense. It could be the way you parent your children, the way you approach your work, the garden you cultivate, the conversations you have, anything where you're bringing forth your unique divine spark into manifestation rather than just consuming and reacting. The key is authenticity. The archonic forces can feed on fake creativity, on expression that's designed to please others or meet external expectations. But authentic expression, creation that comes from your true self and serves the manifestation of your divine spark, generates light and makes you unavailable for harvesting. Fifth, and this might be the most challenging, start questioning everything you were taught about spirituality and religion. I don't mean becoming cynical or closed. I mean applying the same vigilance you're practicing in your inner life to the external teachings you've accepted. Ask yourself, does this teaching empower my direct connection with the divine, or does it make me dependent on external authorities? Does this practice wake me up or keep me asleep? Does this belief expand my consciousness or contract it with fear and guilt? Jesus taught his disciples to test everything, to seek gnosis, direct knowledge, rather than accepting blind faith. The institutional church teaches the opposite. Accept what we tell you. Don't question, have faith in our interpretation. Which approach leads to awakening? Which approach maintains sleep? I also want you to understand something profound about the Archonic forces. They're not omnipotent, they're quite limited, which is why they rely on deception and sleep. The Gnostic texts describe them as ignorant, unable to create authentic light. They can only harvest it from those who've forgotten their nature. The moment you wake up, you become more powerful than the forces that were draining you. Jesus wasn't teaching his disciples to fight the Archons. He was teaching them to wake up, because an awakened consciousness transcends the realm where Archonic forces operate. There's a passage in the Apocryphon of John where Jesus describes what happens when a soul has awakened. The Archons cannot touch the awakened consciousness. The soul passes through their realm like light passes through darkness. This is your destiny. Not someday after death, but right now. In this life, you can wake up. You can protect your divine light. This is what Jesus actually taught. This is the truth that will set you free through direct knowledge, through gnosis. Seekers who commit to this practice report profound changes. A man named David told me that after 6 months of practicing vigilance, situations that used to trigger intense reactions simply stopped having that power. His difficult relationships transformed because he stopped feeding negative patterns with unconscious reactivity. A woman named Jennifer described how her entire life reorganized around her awakening consciousness. Opportunities aligned with her authentic path appeared, and she found herself living with synchronicity she'd never experienced. These are natural results of living from your true nature, rather than from the false self that Archonic forces manipulate. There's a teaching in the Gospel of Philip about what happens when enough individuals awaken. The Archonic powers will dissolve like salt in water, not through being fought but simply through losing their food source. Every person who wakes up weakens the entire system keeping humanity enslaved. You're not just freeing yourself, you're contributing to liberation of human consciousness. This is why sharing this knowledge matters, why engaging with this content is spiritual service. If you haven't subscribed yet, if you're still on the fence about whether this channel is worth following, let me be completely honest with you. I'm not here to build a following for my own ego. I'm not here to create a new religious movement or position myself as some enlightened guru. I'm here because I discovered knowledge that transformed my life, knowledge that Jesus actually taught but which has been hidden from most of humanity. And I made a commitment to share that knowledge with sincere seekers like you. Every week I reveal teachings from the Nag Hammadi texts, from Hermetic and Kabbalistic traditions, from the persecuted mystics who preserved Gnostic wisdom through centuries of suppression. I break down complex spiritual concepts into practical approaches you can implement immediately, and I do it all from the perspective of someone walking this path alongside you, not above you. Subscribe now and activate notifications because next week I'm going to reveal another suppressed teaching from the Gospel of Mary Magdalene about the 7 powers of wrath, the specific tactics the Archonic forces use to keep souls trapped, and the exact practices Jesus taught to neutralize each one. This is knowledge that builds on what you've learned today, and you won't want to miss it. I also want to address something creating resistance in you right now. Part of you might be thinking, this sounds too radical. How can I trust this? That resistance itself might be Archonic influence, the sleep trying to maintain its hold by making you doubt the knowledge that would free you. But let me ask, has institutional Christianity truly transformed your consciousness? Has it given you direct experience of the divine? Or has it kept you dependent, seeking salvation from outside, generating fear and guilt that parasitic forces feed upon? You know the answer. Jesus said you would know the truth by its fruits. What are the fruits of institutional Christianity? Division, judgment, control, fear. What are the fruits of Gnostic awakening? Freedom, direct divine connection, conscious presence, protection from forces that drain your light. Judge for yourself which path leads to liberation. Let me give you one final practice that brings everything together, what I call the light protection meditation. Once per day, sit quietly and connect with your divine spark. Visualize a brilliant light at the center of your chest. This is the actual light of consciousness, your true nature. As you breathe, feel this light growing stronger, expanding outward, creating a field of conscious awareness around your body. Set the intention, I am awake, I am vigilant, I remember my true nature as a divine spark, and I am protected by the perfect light of consciousness from all forces that would drain my energy. Sit with this for at least 5 minutes, really feeling it. Then carry this awareness through your day. Whenever you notice yourself slipping into unconsciousness, take a breath and reconnect with that light. This practice, combined with vigilance, remembering, and authentic expression, creates a complete system for protecting your divine light and awakening from sleep. You now possess knowledge most of humanity never discovers. You know the sleeping mistake that allows Archonic forces to drain your light, the state of unconsciousness and forgetfulness about your true nature. You know the practices Jesus taught to wake up, vigilance, remembering, authentic expression. You know why this knowledge was suppressed, and how to verify its truth through direct experience. What you do with this is up to you. You can slip back into sleep, continuing to allow your divine light to be harvested. Or you can commit to awakening, to becoming vigilant, to remembering your true nature, to protecting your light. If you choose awakening, declare it publicly. Write in the comments, "I choose awakening and I protect my divine light." Make that declaration for yourself and for the collective consciousness of seekers who need this teaching. Your comment helps this video reach others searching for what you found. Don't keep this hidden. Share it, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and practice what you've learned. The Archons maintain power through human sleep. Every person who wakes up weakens their grip. You're not just saving yourself. You're participating in liberation of our species. This is the true teaching of Jesus, not the watered-down version the church peddles, but the radical, liberating, transformative gnosis that makes you free. Wake up, remember who you are, protect your light, and walk this path with me as we continue uncovering suppressed wisdom that transforms consciousness and reconnects you with your divine source. Next week, we go deeper into mechanisms of archonic control and advanced practices for complete spiritual liberation. I'll be here as your friend and guide. Will you be here with me? Subscribe now and let's walk this path together.